One of the things that breaks my heart is that people suffer in silence. There's so many people out there who suffer in silence because of the shame and the guilt and the condemnation that comes with, with sexual trauma. And you don't have to do that. There's hope. There's help out there. You're not alone. There's so many people like me and others who have survived, and we're here to help you. There's places like STAR who does amazing work with the counselors and advocacy that's here to help you. If you feel you can't go to a loved one, or you can't go to your church, pick up the phone and call STAR. Don't wait. Don't be like me. There was a lot of things that I did not talk about, a lot of things that I did not do that caused me a lot of grief, that caused me a lot of, just bad days. But, not saying every day is going to be a good day, but you can have, a life after sexual assault. There's life after sexual assault. You can be a survivor just like me. My name is Tonja Miles. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I've been here all my life, and I've been very fortunate to travel a lot of places, but love here because the love of my life live here. That's my family. We call each other ride or die. We're like down like 4 flat tires, but that's my family. They're great people, and I just love them so much. I've been married for 24 years to my husband, Darren Miles, who we do a lot of amazing things together, and I'm grateful that he's in my life. I'm so grateful to Darren because, back in the day, I thought that I would never be married, just like I thought I would never live to be 21 because of the challenges that I went through. When I was 7 years old, I was molested several times. It happened over a 2-year period. By the time I was 10, I was sexually active on my own and very promiscuous. I don't know why I didn't tell anybody. To this day, when people ask me, why didn't you say anything? I don't know. I can't say that I was threatened or anything like that. It was just, I guess, from guilt and shame and maybe thinking it was something I did. So I just kept it to myself, but I kept it internal. And so external, a lot of things happened. I was ashamed. I lived in shame most of my life. I hated myself. I really did. I was a cutter. I was a bedwetter. All the things that comes with someone who has signs of sexual trauma that's not been dealt with. Even though I dealt with the addiction, I've been clean now from addiction for 35 years, but still I had not dealt with the trauma. I'm a two-time suicide survivor. The first time I tried to kill myself, I was in my early teens. I ended up in a hospital getting my stomach pumped. The last time that I tried, I was in my late teens, and I ended up in a mental hospital for 30 days. When I was 16, I started using drugs, and it went from marijuana to pills, from pills to cocaine, and I'm like, I'll never do crack, but it had gotten so bad, and I did so many things that I needed more drugs because there was more shame. Not only have I been molested, but I've been raped twice. Just a lot of violence in my life. I started prostitution because someone told me they had an uncle who wanted to give me money for drugs, and I thought it made sense. I've been giving it away. Why shouldn't I get paid for it? And that, led to me, doing prostitution. Not only, did I start prostituting then, but, it's also when, I, first time I got raped. I thought this was a great guy. I thought it was a guy who really liked me because I had been involved with so many jacked up guys. So many guys who, didn't treat me well. And I kind of, was used to those guys. And met this guy, and I thought he really liked me, and and I thought that I was gonna be nice. I wasn't gonna have sex with him like I used to with guys. This was gonna be something strictly platonic, and we were gonna just just kick it. And I went to his apartment. He had some cocaine, and we did coke together. And he raped me, and it was very violent. He tore my clothes off, and I remember he passed out, and he knocked me out. And I got up, and I tiptoed and just wanted to get my clothes because I didn't want him to wake up. And I ran out the apartment, half dressed, and I found this Circle K on the corner, and I called someone to come get me. And I didn't tell anybody. I could have told someone, but I didn't think at this time, I was so out there with the drugs, with the prostitution, just with such a, crazy lifestyle, promiscuous lifestyle. Who would believe me? I mean, who would take me, who would take me at my word? People would bring up my past from the drugs and all the other things I've done. I had so many different issues that just wasn't addressed because back in the day, and still today, in the African American community and in the faith-based community, you don't talk about being molested. You don't talk about sexual trauma. To be honest, it's almost sad. It's almost like a rite of passage in my culture, and I hate that. And I'm gonna do something about that. I became this person who just wanted to just change everything about myself. I started gaining weight because I didn't want to be noticed by any men. I changed my hairstyle. I stopped wearing makeup. I started wearing, clothes that covered up everything. And I just, started, really getting involved in my faith. And that's what sustained me, and of course I stopped using drugs. It was a miracle that I, were able to get off drugs that way, because I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But I went cold turkey, and for 4 years I did rehabilitation. And even though, I did some drastic things in my life, I still never, got the help that I needed. But anyway, I did do a life change. And so for 4 years, I just worked on me, worked on becoming a better person, and worked on, changing people, places, and things in my life. And so about the 5th year, I went to this church, and I just, immersed myself in, what they were doing. And one particular guy in the church was going out to prisons. He was going out to nursing homes. He was going on the corners where crack dealers were, telling them that, look, they didn't have to live life like this, and trying to stop people from buying crack because they didn't have to do that. And, I like what he did. I mean, like, he went into prison to help people, and he went to the Salvation Army. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff I promised God I would do, and that's the kind of stuff I want to do. And so anyway, so I connected with him. His name is Darren, my husband now. And so we started going out. And so remember, I sing, so he would preach. And so we would, go into nursing homes, into prisons. And it was so good because I was giving back. And one of the things, remember, I've made a vow to God. So I began to share my testimony about, what God had done in my life. And, I told the good, bad, and the ugly. And just told about the addiction, and, told them about all the bad things I did, just to encourage them that, look, if I did it, and, here it is, 5, 6 years later that, I'm clean, you can do it too. So we did this probably for like 4 years. And then, eventually, of course, I was never attracted to him. He was just a great guy. And he came from this great family, and he was one of the most nicest guys I've ever met. He didn't have any of the trauma that I had as a kid. One of the things that did happen in my life is that, during the time that I was in my teenagers, my mom became an alcoholic. So, not only did I have my issues with addiction, but, I'm living in a house with someone who has an addiction as well. So anyway, we started doing all these amazing things together, for about, I guess about 8 years now. And, I was just like, okay, this is a great guy, never thought ever thought about marrying him. And one day he asked me to marry him, and I'm like, I don't think so. I kind of come from a goofy kind of background, and he knew about my background because he's heard my story, my testimony all the time. And, the fact that he still, saw something in me and wanted to marry me was kind of a strange and scary thing. But it was, a very, very beautiful thing. And so at first I told him no. And we still, did stuff together, and we were still friends. But about 2 years later, I told him, I said, you know what, I think you're the one. And so we got married some years later, and we began to do this ministry called Set Free Indeed, John 8:36. And it said, whom the Son has set free is free indeed. And of course, I would use that, scripture reference, and just use my life as just a testament that, look, if I can get off drugs, you can get off drugs. Because, I used drugs because I was trying to mask all the shame and the pain, from the sexual trauma. I mean, the trauma almost took me out. And because again, I didn't have any coping skills, so my coping skills was drugs and sex and unhealthy stuff, because I didn't know there were healthier coping skills. So anyway, we began to do all these great things together. And in the meantime, my mom did become, sober. Before she died, she was sober for 25 years. And she did the same thing. She was big into the recovery community and, talk to people about being in recovery. So it was great for me to see her on her journey and to see her path to, being, sober as well. A friend of mine told me that she thought that I should see a psychiatrist. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm not crazy. She's like, a psychiatrist is not for people who are crazy, but something's not right. You're not sleeping, or you're sleeping too much. Something's not right. You're kind of off. And I was. And when I went, he diagnosed me as having PTSD and anxiety. So I had to do my research on what PTSD was, because I thought only soldiers got it. But even though I was a soldier, military police for 9 years, which I love serving my country, but that's not the reason why, the PTSD came from. It came from the sexual trauma. The brain is just like any organ in our body, and if I had an issue with my heart, I would go to see a heart doctor. So why wouldn't I go to a psychiatrist if there's something in my brain that wasn't quite right? I know people have told me, you could pray it away, and I've tried that. I pray every day and meditate every day, but there was still something else that was going on. And so once I was able to go back and learn about PTSD, learn about anxiety, and then I went back and I realized that all of the things that I had suffered came from being sexually traumatized. And if I would have known of places and resources, I probably wouldn't have had to go through some of the things that I went through. That's why I'm so grateful for STAR and the work that they're doing present day. Speaking of present day, my husband and I, like I said, we love helping people. We love serving people. I have this great radio show that's called The Tailgate Show, where I get to interview everybody and help people in our community with resources and just give them knowledge and stuff like that. And I had Star on, and that was one of my favorite shows because I was still learning stuff that I didn't know. But to get that information out in our community, that there's a place like Star that they can go to, because so many women are suffering in silence, and men. People don't talk about it because they feel the guilt, the shame, the condemnation. And guess what? You don't have to feel that way. There's hope. There's help. There's healing. There's life after sexual trauma. And I'm a living witness of that. Even though I have to do self-care, I have to take care of myself every day. Yes, I'm on meds, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I do a lot of self-care. I go to talk therapy once a week, and I deal with the issues that, it's like residue, if you will, that comes from that kind of stays with you, and I'm dealing with that residue. My husband has stuck with me throughout this journey. It's been a great journey. I've learned a lot, and I'm so grateful. There's a scripture, and I'm not going to get all biblical on you, but it says, what the enemy, meant for evil, God can turn it around for good. And I believe that God has turned all the bad stuff, all the jacked up stuff that I've been through, all the misery that I've been through, into a message. And that's a message of hope and a message of help. And more than that, there's life after sexual trauma. People who go through traumatic things, it's the same thing. It's trauma, especially if there's trauma after trauma after trauma. It's just like taking a fist, to me, or a bat, and just hitting somebody upside the head. That's kind of how it feels. And eventually, it affects you, and it'll come out in so many different ways. So when you can get the help, there is help. There is hope. But, I can say today that, being in therapy, talking about it, doing something about it, advocating for people who've been in the same situations I have. I love doing that. As a certified peer support specialist, I wake up every day and I get to serve people who are on drugs, people who have mental health diagnosis, people who've been molested, people who've been in prison. A lot of it, I work a lot with ladies, and probably half of the ladies in the prison here in Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish, have been sexually molested. A cool thing was when I was able to bring Star inside of the prison. That was phenomenal. Those ladies were so excited to know when they got out that there was hope and that there was help. And so anything I can do for Star, I'm going to do it. When I was a little girl, I used to sing this song in Baton Rouge Community Chorus. And it went, I am just a child, I know. Everything I am will grow. Things that hurt when I am small grows much bigger when I'm tall. And that's the truth. You know, they don't go away. It gets bigger and it gets worse. And you can mask it. I did. I wore a mask most of my life. I'm not doing it anymore. That's why I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I'm not ashamed to tell people about it. It breaks my heart to know that there are so many people out there who are suffering in silence, and they don't have to do that anymore. There's hope, there's help, there's healing. You can get your life back. You can take your power back, and you can live a normal life where you can be happy and you can be successful, because there's places like STAR.